Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Confidence Connection, a weekly show where we share women's stories of confidence from all around the world. This week, I am joined by Megan Kozak. So, she is a relationship educator, a couples counsellor, and the co founder of Lighthouse Relationship Psychology and Counselling Practice. She's coming to us live from Brisbane. She has two passions. One is couples. She loves helping couples create a happy and healthy relationship because it has an incredible ripple effect on the rest of their lives. So true. And number two is sisterhood. She loves supporting and empowering women to listen, learn, and advocate for each other, especially in moments when their identity is shaken. So, welcome, Megan. Thank you so much for being here. Do you want to share a little bit with the audience about who you are, your background, and how you got to be where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here
You
this
are.
morning. Well, my name's Megan. I'm 36. I'm from Brisbane. I am married to a lovely man who I've been with for the past 16 years, and I have two beautiful little girls. The bulk of my career, I've worked in education, actually. So I worked in education for about 15 years, in everywhere between working with women in detention, so young girls in juvenile
Oh,
detention centres, through to Catholic education systems and state education systems, into leadership and managing staff and that sort of thing. And then decided to take a really big left-hand turn and move into working with couples, working with relationships, which to the outside looks really strange, but for me was a natural progression because my focus had always been working with social emotional education and identity formation. So it's just a delightful next step for me.
yeah, that's awesome. And I didn't know the part about teaching, the detention and the juveniles. That's a whole nother story for another day.
Yeah,
That's I'm sure
yeah,
that taught you a lot, and it's amazing. You're right.
yeah.
You've had such a wide background that, of course, you're going to keep progressing and working with different demographics, I guess. That's awesome. So you went through a lot of change in 2020. Do you want to tell us about that and how you changed paths to your life?
Yeah, absolutely. 2020, yeah, it is funny to say I went through a lot of change, didn't we all? I don't know if there
Yeah,
was
we did,
anybody who got through 2020 unscathed in some kind of a way.
which is kind of a good
So,
thing.
oh, absolutely. I think we
We
need
all
those
grew.
kind of moments, don't we, to
Mm.
shake us up a little bit. And it really did for me. So, as I said, I'd been working in education for quite a while and I had moved to sort of the top tier of where I wanted to be. I was working in senior leadership and there was so much about it that I loved, but it was really taxing as well, as any leadership position is, regardless of your industry. It's a really huge requirement. And I've got these two little girls who at the time were 5 and 7, and I was finding that I would get home late and I'd be leaving very early, and I'd get home just absolutely shattered. And that would be a normal day in a normal year. But you throw in there a global pandemic and just the absolute shifting changes, shifting sands and changes of that time. And my role, as I said, was identity formation. And so part of that was coordinating the graduation for our kids, doing the major events of the college, things where there was just no way to know how everything was going to go. And I just found everything just so exhausting, much more so than a normal year. And I got to the end just shattered, shattered in every possible way, just spiritually, emotionally, physically, just got to the end and thought, I just don't know if I can do that again. I don't know if I've got it in me, and I don't know if I can put my kids through that again. And so I decided to take a little bit of leave. I had some long service leave, which was a beautiful gift. And so I decided to take it and just do some really deep consideration of what it was that I wanted with my life. And each year for the past 15 years or so, I've had a word for the year that's kind of come
Yeah.
clear around January. So flourish or thrive or whatever it is, something to inspire me and keep me going. And I remember just sitting in this park and writing and going, God, what am I going to do for this year? And the words that just kept coming up were refresh, replenish, reestablish, repurpose, reimagine. And I was like, oh, I've got to pick one of those. And I thought, well, actually, no, I don't. I think the word that's coming up for me is re. I've really got to just
Yeah.
re everything in my life at the
Yeah.
moment. So I did. I stopped. I gave myself permission to step away from a role that was wonderful, that was well earning and well respected, and all of the things that you would strive towards to be successful, and to re. So that's exactly what I did. I reimagined what it was my life could be. I redesigned what my week might look like. I repurposed my skills and I retrained to move in a different direction.
That's so beautiful how you came to that conclusion. I think we all, like I said, we all went through change. We all our life, but I think I love that you did it with intention. I think so many of us, it kind of happened to us and we just had to by out of like a scarcity mindset of I have no choice but to change my life. And I love that you came at it with intention. And also I love that you moved into couples therapy, because how many relationships also had to change and were turbulent and went up or down in the last couple of years, as we all spend more time with each other than we ever have before. So, which is, a good thing, but it also chucks a lot of, things in the mix, because you're
Yes.
not actually used to spending that much time with each other. So
You're
it's really
absolutely
interesting.
right. Yes. In
Yeah.
many
And
ways,
you,
COVID was not kind to couples. Yes.
yeah. Although, I mean, me personally, our relationship got better, which was great. But I know for a lot of people, it didn't. So you conducted a lot of interviews with different ladies during 2020, and you're wanting to turn those into a book for your daughters. So do you want to tell us a bit more about those interviews, what you're hoping your daughters gain from those stories, and which stories stood out to you the most?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, I decided to read, my life, which sounds lovely. And in that moment, I was like, yes, we've got it. Let's go. And
Yeah.
then I thought, oh God, how? What does that even look like? And where do I
Yeah.
even start? So I think I was just, hopeful, but entirely and completely lost as to how I would actually do that on a practical sense. And I remember just sitting there and going, well, who do I even ask? How do I find out? If you get to a point when you're 35 and you're doing well, you're seemingly successful, you've got a wonderful husband, like all of the things, check all of the external boxes. Who do you talk to and say, I think I'm not exactly happy? How do you figure that out? And I just remember thinking that there has to be other people who have experienced this, particularly women. I wanted to understand and hear from women who had walked this before me. And
Yeah.
I'm in the really fortunate position to have lots of really strong, amazing, powerful women all around me. So I've got beautiful aunties. I've got amazing friends who I've known for 25 years. I've got colleagues who inspire me. And so I thought, I might just ask them. I might just book in some time and have some coffees and ask them about moments in their life that would never normally come up in a how's your weekend kind of a conversation. And so I did. And so I came up with these questions around, tell me about a time that you had to be really brave. They were questions purely for me, really, at that stage. What did you
Yeah.
do? Tell me about a moment when you stepped out boldly. Tell me about a moment when you did something that seemed small, but in fact had a really big impact on your life. And I got to have these conversations with women who I had known for so much of my life, but had never known this part of their story because I had never sat down with them and asked them these really deep, important
Yeah.
questions. And what I learned was just extraordinary and beautiful. So I worked with people, I discovered and learned about people who had become the first CEO of a major company, and people who became a television journalist, and people who did all kinds of incredible things that I would never have known about otherwise. And I'll tell you about two. So
Yeah.
I interviewed a lovely colleague of mine who I'd known for several years. And so she's a teacher,
Yeah.
wonderful teacher, really exceptional. And it wasn't until I'd known her for about 5 years that I discovered she was actually a former Olympian. It was something that had never come up. And I thought, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, what? And so as I asked her more about her story, I discovered she was an Olympic gymnast and she made it all the way to Athens in 2004 and had recovered from a broken back in order to get there. And then found out, or got there, everything photo on the stamp, picture on the mug, wearing the uniform, all beautiful. And then the day before the opening ceremony, she snapped her Achilles and was never able to compete.
Oh,
And so flew home and was on home soil before her competition even started. And I
oh,
just was sitting there in such awe of this woman's resilience, thinking, I can't believe I never knew this before. What an amazing story that you have that you carry with you. Another one, beautiful woman. This is my auntie. She's just lovely. And all throughout my life, I knew she was a wonderful musician. But at times she would just kind of tutor and do bits and pieces. But it turned out in her 20s and 30s, she played for orchestras all over Australia. She was exceptional violinist. And she took 18 years off to be a mother. And then I remember interviewing her, and what she said to me was, I wanted to go back, but no one had ever done it before because, Megan, you don't come back from motherhood. And I thought, oh gosh, wow. But she decided to be brave and walk this path that no one had before. And at 47, she became the oldest person to ever win a position in the Queensland Symphony Orchestra. And she's still there today. And these stories are stories of ordinary women who I had known for so long, but the stories just got me. And I thought, oh, it's just so powerful and rich. It's a story of courage or resilience or believing in yourself or being bold. And they're the stories that I want my daughters to learn and to grow up with, because I want them to know that the women that they've heard about in my circle or in their circle, ordinary women, just like the women that they will grow up to be, have extraordinary stories, and so can they. So we've been to accompany them on their journey.
That's brilliant. That's amazing. And I love that story of the Olympian, like, no, how you're right, the resilience, how you bounce back from that. It's hard enough, careers like that where you reach the peak and you do the Olympics and then you've got to think about changing your life. But in that moment, have to change your life is pretty crazy.
Yes, absolutely.
But I love what I was getting from that as you were talking about these stories is you're right, we don't get these stories. And often if we do hear them, and I'm thinking of this because I've been to one recently, is it's at people's funerals. And then you hear all these stories. And you're like, what? I've been to 2 funerals this year and you learn so much about this person that you never knew. And you're like, how did I not know this? And you're like, oh my gosh, the conversations I could have had with this person if I knew that, so many questions you want to ask. You're like, wow, you've done so many amazing things. And I think what you're doing, like, we should all be doing it and actually finding, the whole story of all these people around us, because you don't want to wait until the end to find out what an amazing person they are, right?
Absolutely. I could not agree with you more. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So with all of this, you said it was a natural progression into couples therapy, but what is it about that made you want to get into it?
Yeah, great question. I guess what I loved about education is the same thing that I love about couples therapy. So in education, I would work with students who in a lot of ways were the first people to make a major change in their family. So often the kids I would work with would be the first ones to graduate from high school, and that would be amazing, or the first ones to go to university, and that would be extraordinary. And so they were paving a new way for their family and for the kids or the family or friends even around them who would see that and witness a new way of being. And so they would be breaking through whatever boundaries or glass ceilings or whatever they thought existed for them. And that was exceptional, and I just loved that. And by uncovering their identity and developing skills, they could create really lasting change for themselves and other people. And that's the same thing with couples therapy that I just love. So it is so valuable and important for the couple that I'm working with. Absolutely, no question. What I love about it, though, is that it has profound generational change, because what we bring into a relationship, so much of it comes from our family of origin. We either resist it and try to rebel against what we have seen, or we love it and try to replicate what we've seen. And so either way, it has this really big impact on us. And so if we come from a family where communication was not a strong suit, or where there was levels of boundary issues, whether we were a really enmeshed family or whether there just wasn't enough connection, whatever it was that was going on there, that's what we bring with us, for better or for worse. And so I think when you're able to teach a couple skills and ways of working that allow them to communicate, to do conflict well, to set up traditions and boundaries that will just serve them and their children so well. It's not just them that it's impacting, it's their children, it's their friends, it's their wider circle. So it's the generational change that I just absolutely love about it.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that aspect. And just a side question that popped up in my mind, what would you say to people? Like, I feel like things like therapy and couples, relationship counselling, all that, people feel like they need to be on the brink of divorce or breaking up to get counselling or therapy. And so what would you say to those people, or anyone in a relationship, whether they think they're good or bad or whatever stage in their relationship, who is therapy for, this couple therapy?
It's my favorite question. I love it so much. Yes. So the research tells us that it takes a couple an average of 6 years to seek help. Isn't that extraordinary? And the bulk of divorces happen between years 8 and 12 of a relationship. So if you can imagine you've waited that long, how much of your relationship has been really, really tough. And I think if we were to apply it to anything else, like if we had a toothache, we probably wouldn't wait 6 years to get it sorted out. Or if we had a sound, making a funny sound in our car, and we were just like, oh, it'll be fine, I'll give it a couple more years, no worries.
Yeah.
Like we'd sort it out because of that. But for whatever reason, it's because it's personal, because it's our relationship, or because it's our mental health. We think we've got some kind of an expectation that we should be able to figure it out on our own, that love should be enough and everything else should fall into place. And you know what? I have beautiful couples who come and work with me when times are really tough. I have beautiful couples who come and work with me preventatively because they're about to have a baby and they want to make sure that everything in their life is clear
Brilliant.
and ready, and they've got the best possible start for this beautiful kid that they're bringing into the world. So you do not need to be at death's door. You do not need to wait until the tooth is about to fall out before you go and seek help. Like, just find someone that you trust, learn some skills, upskill yourself, and just build a beautiful relationship and family just from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah, that is brilliant. And I could not agree more. You're right. There are some things in life people let go, to the ninth hour,
Yes.
but preventative is always best in any case for anything in life. Yes. And I always like the analogy for any sort of coaching, like I coach, is when you go to the gym, if you want to see the best results, you go and get a personal trainer, right? The Olympians, you don't get to the Olympics without that coaching. And I feel like we can see it so clearly in the sporting world, but in every other aspect of your life, it's good to have those coaches and that backup and that support and that training. Like school, definitely. You don't just go to school and not have a teacher, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I love that. So tell us more about your business and what it is exactly that you do for people, or the different methods that you run your business through.
Absolutely. So I'm the co-founder. My husband and I decided to found this business together, create this business together called Lighthouse Relationships, Psychology and Counselling. So as the name suggests, it's a psychology and counselling practice. It's a private practice in Brisbane in a suburb called New Farm. And so we work with individuals and we work with couples. So individually, they can come in for individual therapy and work with our psychologists who are there. Couples therapy, they come and work with either a psychologist or relationships counsellor. And they just do some fantastic work. All of our practitioners are trained in what's called Gottman Method Couples Therapy, which is a really renowned style of couples therapy. It's excellent and it's highly practical and we just love it. We work with couples in Brisbane face-to-face, but we also work with couples across Australia and New Zealand. So I think one of the benefits of COVID is that it's really opened up the world in a whole different way. It's closed us down a lot, but opened us up a lot. So that's what great. So we work with couples online just as we're chatting now, which is really valuable. We also do some facilitated courses and some email courses as well, and they're all available via our website. Yeah.
That's brilliant. And so you do, as we mentioned at the start, you believe a lot in the sisterhood. So what does sisterhood mean to you and why is it so important to you?
Yeah, I really do. And I think it's always been important, and having two daughters even more so, coming from a family of strong women, beautiful friends, writing this book, it's just so valuable. A few years ago, I read about this word in the construction industry, which is called sistering. And so when a structure is built, there's always a series of beams that are called joists, and these joists support the floor and the ceiling. Sometimes these joists become too weak from heaviness or from pressure, or just because architecture changes over time. And so the architect will suggest sistering it with another joist, which doesn't mean you take it out, but it means you put another joist exactly beside it. And straight away it becomes stronger. And that's what we do, I think, as sisters, as sisterhood or sistering. We walk beside one another. We learn from each other. We accompany one another on this. And by sharing little snippets of our story and just being there, being that sister support joist beside one another, we're able to go, oh, do you know what? I've walked where you've walked. This could be a way, and we just, regardless of whether we're ahead or behind the person who we're next to, it just becomes this incredible ability to support and guide one another. And it allows us to be an advocate. I think sometimes women are pitted as competitors, like it's a bit of a comparative game. And I just don't think it's true. I think we can just be each other's most extraordinary advocates. And so I think reframing it as sistering or sisterhood, I think, is a beautiful way to do that.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I haven't heard of sistery before. I think I can imagine it, but that's a beautiful analogy Very clear analogy of how it works. That's awesome. So thanks so much for sharing your story. So moving on to confidence now, which is what we're all here for, to grow and build our confidence. So what does confidence mean to you?
I think, to sum it up really briefly, I think it is knowing with the core of yourself that you have got value and worth. Because when I know it, then I can act on it.
Yeah, I love that. I always get such different answers each week, and I think it's brilliant hearing everyone's different aspects of confidence. I think they're all true. I just think there's so many different ways to convey confidence. So how do you help people build their confidence, whether it's through your work or through your personal day-to-day life?
Yeah, I think in both of those, whether it's work or personal, I spend time helping people feel heard and valued and understood. And so I teach them strategies then to ask for what it is that they need, because sometimes it's like we need permission to do that, to identify what we feel and then ask for what we need. And I think that that is a beautiful first step towards confidence, because when you know that you have intrinsic value, you know that you're allowed to ask for time or space or love or whatever it is. And so I have the absolute privilege of getting to do that.
Yeah, that is brilliant. And I love that. Like there's a quote, don't know who it's from, but it's like everyone walks around with an invisible sign on their head saying, I just want to be heard, or like I want to be loved, give me attention. Right. And it's like we have another one that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for for a reason. We should be listening twice as much as we speak. So
yes. Oh, I love that so much. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone who's wanting to build their confidence but doesn't know where to start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think sometimes we can feel a bit stuck in that moment, can't we? If we're like, oh yeah, that'd be great, but how? And that was my experience with Ree. I'm like, that sounds great, but how? So I think that's so important. I think often we lack confidence in ourselves because we don't really know ourselves. So it's hard to feel confident when you don't know who or what it is that you are projecting or trying to be confident about. And so sometimes we'll put on a mask and pretend that that's confidence, when in fact it's just a mask. And our masks look different depending on who we are. So I think step one is identify who you are and what you like, and keep it simple. Don't suddenly try to figure out the core of your being and work from that. I mean, if you can, brilliant, but sometimes we're not quite at that point. And so if you're really at the beginning of going, well, okay, if I want to be confident, how do I discover who that person is? Make it easy. Listen to a bunch of different music. Figure out the one that gives you a headache and the one that gives you goosebumps and chills that you love. Cook a whole bunch of different eggs in different ways. Do you like them fried or do you like them scrambled? What is it that you like? Find out the things that you enjoy, that bring you joy, and then keep on seeking that and keep on working towards that. And that way, when something comes up and you get a choice, someone says to you, where would you like to go for dinner? And instead of going, oh, I don't know, I don't mind, wherever you'd like to go, you say, I'd like sushi, actually. That'd be great. Because you know what it is that you want and what it is that you like. So take the time to invest in learning about yourself. You are absolutely worthwhile. That investment is valuable.
Yeah, that is brilliant. Brilliant answer. So what's something you know now that you wish you knew when you were younger?
Oh, that perfection is impossible and overrated. Oh, so much. I was too skinny, too stressed, and so overscheduled. And all of it was just hiding behind an absolute shield of perfectionism, because I was terrified that who I was behind it was not intelligent enough, beautiful enough, smart enough, worthy enough, funny enough, any enough. So I think just discovering that it turns out we're all broken and we're all complicated. And in fact, that's more beautiful and more interesting and more powerful than the pretend shield of perfectionism that you put up.
Oh, definitely. And I think that perfectionism can be linked to that lack of confidence, because you feel like I'm not good enough, or, I don't want people to see me get it wrong or not be perfect. Leads to that lack of confidence, rather than just embracing who you are, that you are human, you are going to make mistakes, and that's okay, because you can learn and grow and move through those mistakes. And everyone's perception of what is right is different anyway. So your perception of perfectionism is totally different to my perception of perfectionism. So what is the perfectionism anyway?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, gosh. Put down the perfect shield, put down the mask, and just embrace this beautiful gift that you are for us. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what's your Best advice you've been given or your favourite quote to live by?
Oh, I have so many. They litter my walls. They're all over my Pinterest pages. I just love them so much.
Same.
The the one, words are so powerful.
They are.
The one that I'm living by at the moment is you can do everything, just not at the same time. And that was something my mum told me a long time ago. And I don't know if it was her wisdom or she borrowed it from someone else. But at the time, I remember thinking, oh, yeah, sure, that's nice. And right now, as I'm mothering and developing a business and working with my husband and everything, I'm living it. I'm like, yes, you can do it all, just not at the same time.
Yeah, that's so right. And I think too, especially like with the motherhood thing, it's like you don't bring your kids into the practice, right? You have your mothering time and you have your business time, and sometimes I'm sure they interact, but you can do both, but in different spaces with intention.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So what's your favorite book or podcast in terms of personal growth and confidence?
Yeah, there's two that I just love at the moment, and I've read them again and again over the past few years. So Glennon Doyle's Untamed is just a perpetual fixture on my bedside table right now. And Brené Brown's Daring Greatly, which is a little bit older, but I just love. There's just such wisdom, and no matter where I open up, there's something that will grab me and remind me to go out there and just go for it. I just love it.
Yeah, Brené Brown is just like my favorite. I mean, if you're into confidence, I mean, and courage, of course, you're into Brené Brown. So do you listen to any podcasts, or are you more of a reader?
Look, bit of both. I listen to a bit of both. I listen to Unlocking Us it's the same people. Unlocking Us with Brené Brown. I listen to the Glennon Doyle podcast, which I can't even remember the name of now. That's terrible.
Yeah.
I also love How to Fail is a fantastic podcast with Elizabeth Day and Elizabeth Gilbert's Magic Lessons. They're some of my favorites.
Yeah. Brilliant. Great recommendations. And do you have any favorite people to follow online? Probably the same people again.
Yeah, look, probably the same people. But there's probably one more I would add, and it's Morgan Harper Nichols. And so she is a poet and a writer. She is just so exceptional, and she will post daily the artwork that she does or the quotes that she's written, and every one of them is like a breath of fresh air. I just love them.
That's brilliant. So where can people find you to connect with you online, and whether it be personal or business?
Yeah, absolutely. So if they're looking for our business, then they can come along to lighthouserelationships.com.au and they'll find all manner of information there about individual or couples therapy. Or you can find us on Instagram at lighthouse_relationships or on Facebook at Lighthouse Relationships. And you'll see a whole bunch of information and useful tips and tricks for you there.
Great. And do you have any final words before we wrap up that you want to share with people?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Just thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us on the show. I think everyone can take away so much from that. And hopefully we've planted a seed in some people's mind that, couples therapy is okay, even if you're not falling off the edge of the cliff.
Yes, that's right. Get it before you fall off the cliff. Come up to the top.
Well, exactly. Yes. So thanks to everyone for watching and tuning in, and we'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.